Today's question is, did Marshall Applewhite, one of the co-founders of Heaven's Gate, really go to jail for stealing a rental car? If it is true, why might he have done something like this? Could it be that his perceived role as a religious figure might have actually informed this unusual decision? Well, it is true. He did go to jail for stealing a rental car, but perhaps we might want to qualify what exactly stealing a rental car involved. It wasn't like he walked onto a parking lot and just got in the car and drove away. It was more so that he continued to maintain possession of the vehicle longer than he had originally agreed. So, in other words, he rented this car for a set length of time, but he didn't return it when he was supposed to. And so, technically, this was theft, right? Because when you rent a car, you're getting it for a certain amount of time, and beyond that, it's not supposed to be in your possession. It's supposed to be back on the lot so other people can make use of it. So a warrant was put out for his arrest. Applewhite and Nettles were actually under investigation for credit card fraud at the time, and that's how the warrant was discovered. And so sometime in late 1974, Applewhite was jailed for 6 months. Now, Applewhite talks about this event a little bit in the 88 update. This was a document that the group put out in 1988. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but I will throw it out there that there are references to this event in the 88 update, and it is probably worthwhile to look at it, if for no other reason than to get an understanding of how Applewhite himself perceived this chapter in his life. So perhaps what's most interesting about this event is the reason that Applewhite supplied the authorities when they began investigating him for this rental car theft. Applewhite actually told the police that he was divinely appointed to maintain possession of that rental car for longer than he had originally agreed to be using it. So it calls to mind, at least for me, it calls to mind that, repeated line throughout the Blues Brothers movie where they keep saying that they're on a mission from God. Applewhite appears to have thought something similar. Benjamin Zeller, in his book America's UFO Religion, has this to say about the rental car fiasco. Applewhite was arraigned and transferred to Missouri, where he was imprisoned for 6 months awaiting trial. Nettles returned to working as a nurse during this time. The theft of the rental car hints at an important element in the two's developing theology, what scholars call antinomianism. From the Greek work opposed to the law, antinomianism in Christian theology means that moral or religious laws no longer hold for those who have been saved. Martin Luther coins the term during a dispute with fellow reformer Johann Agricola, who championed a view that the laws of Moses, such as Sabbath observance, no longer held for Christians. For Agricola, God's grace overrode the laws of the Old Testament. In all cases, individuals and groups possessing an antinomian outlook believe that their religious convictions permit them to violate laws that other people or groups follow. In the case of Heaven's Gate, Applewhite and Nettles believed that their status as the two witnesses and the importance of their spiritual mission permitted them to violate human laws. The police and courts begged to differ. I would add to this, because I think this is a really good observation that Zeller is bringing into the discussion, the antinomian aspect. I would add to it that just based on my conversations that I've had with Heaven's Gate believers, this aspect of, Applewhite and Nettles, or T and Do, as they would call them, what they say is the truth, and that's sort of the end of the discussion.
There was a recipe card written, and it specifically said to use Lowry's seasoning. And for some reason, something had gotten mistranslated or whatever, and when people were going to the grocery store for supply runs, they were getting McCormick seasoning. And T&O did not like McCormick seasoning. It was not good, right? They're like, that's the bottom of the barrel, basically. We said Lowry's because it's the best. It's good. We're not trying to like pinch pennies or whatever. She asked somebody to go get the recipe card so she could see what was written on it, because she had written a recipe card that said Lowry's. The recipe card that they brought to her was not in her handwriting. Somebody else had transferred it and left that out and just said seasoning. So it was like these little, she's like, I don't even, there was like, it seemed like almost frustration at points. Like, we're telling you things, but it's going through your computer and you're filtering it out and putting something down that we did not tell you to put down.
I mean, I had some Heaven's Gate believers tell me that if T&O told you the sky was purple, then it meant the sky was purple. And if it looked like it was blue from your perspective, well, then your perspective was wrong. So, I mean, this is the way that the kind of epistemology of Heaven's Gate works. At least this is one dimension of it. Epistemology in the sense of, how we go about forming beliefs, how we go about acquiring knowledge. To put it simply, you acquire knowledge from T&O. That's how it works in Heaven's Gate. And why should it be any different when it comes to acquiring knowledge about what kind of behavior is acceptable? But I think it does definitely say something about their religious views and how they understood their religious roles, their role on earth within the context of their belief system. They thought they were on a mission to save everyone from the apocalypse by explaining how you have to overcome your humanness, and they'll show you how to do that, and then you need to leave the planet in one way or another, and so on. Now, from this example, I don't think people should extrapolate that Heaven's Gate were these anarchists who, just broke laws all the time. If I remember correctly, actually, one of the last things they did before they ended their lives was they made sure to pay people back that they owed money to. I think they even made a point of returning all their library books and paying off their library fines, within a few days of, ending their lives. That's always interested me. They did seem very conscientious, at least in some respects, of, a certain kind of obligation that they had to other people. But it is very interesting as well, and perhaps more important, to also take note of the ways in which they were not conscientious at all of how their actions affected other people. Case in point, requiring people to completely divorce themselves from their family, from spouses, from children, from friends and loved ones.
Now, the second question that I thought people might want to ask, and that is, do we really hate our mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers? Do we really feel that way? Unfortunately, it's the individuals that these vehicles cared for the most that are actually the greatest threat to us. We had to hate the things that will pull us back and be our enemies. And so we do hate the things that would pull us backwards.
To Heaven's Gate, from the Heaven's Gate's perspective, if loved ones and family members were looking at them and, were upset by the fact that they had gone off to live this monastic life apart from them, and, at its most extreme, that they chose to bring an end to their lives, Heaven's Gate would say, well, that's because you're kind of trapped in the iron cage of human thinking, to maybe borrow a term from Weber.
What we're about to do is certainly nothing to think negatively about.
And I know that to the ones in the world who might recognize this vehicle, they may think they know me, but I am not this vehicle.
It's your problem that you're perceiving their suicide as a suicide.
Come on, where do you get this stuff?
I want to let you know that you might need to get someone else to finish up your website right now.
So they're very selective how obligated they feel to, take other people's feelings and other people's, welfare and, and interests into consideration when making decisions about what actions to take. They're very selective about that. And you could say it's arbitrary, although I would be cautious about forgetting that not always, but very, very often, if we do a little digging, we can usually find something in the Heaven's Gate theology that will explain it. Not say that it's right or that it's a good thing, but that it would at least explain their rationale for why they would make various exceptions that to us might seem arbitrary if we just look at it at first glance. I think that the rental car fiasco is an important part of the Heaven's Gate story. I don't think that it is productive to gloss over it or try to whitewash it or sugarcoat it. It's very obvious that Applewhite and Nettles really did not think that they needed to obey, the rules. And that should concern us, because there are people out there today who continue to espouse belief in Heaven's Gate. And if you have a group of people who believe in a worldview which tells them that, under the right circumstances, you are permitted to behave in a way that is contrary to the law, that is contrary to, even other people's interests, like you don't actually have to consider how your actions are going to affect other people. If you have a group of people that espouses belief in a religion that tells them those kinds of things, that's a liability. Those are the kind of people that, you probably want to stay away from. Those are the kind of people whose behavior is inherently unpredictable, because you can never tell when they're going to feel like they just got new instructions from the alien gods that, okay, it's acceptable for you to, do this or that. So like nowadays, one thing I'll see with contemporary followers of Heaven's Gate is a lot of them will engage in, bullying. A lot of times bullying other Heaven's Gate believers for not towing the line in their view, but also bullying, non-believers. They can be quite nasty and very aggressive towards non-believers who they consider a threat. And I've experienced it firsthand, and I've seen it firsthand with other people that they've done this to. Heaven's Gate believers base their beliefs and their decisions largely on the way they feel. So if they feel like someone is a threat to the next level's will being accomplished on Earth, that's really all the information they need. And the decisions that they will make on the basis of that belief are really unpredictable. You really never know what they're going to say or what they're going to do. And this has been true from the very beginning. This has always been a defining characteristic of Heaven's Gate, is their beliefs are kind of always subject to revision. And this works at the macro level of their whole belief system, as a whole, and also on the micro level, at the level of like interpersonal interactions, the way that they engage with other people, right? Because they don't look at themselves as human beings. They don't think that they're human beings like you and me. They think that they are, alien minds inside human bodies, and that you and I and everybody else, is different. We're not going to the next level. We're not working on overcoming our humanness. We are not doing the will of Tian-Do. And to whatever extent this kind of antinomian mentality persists in Heaven's Gate today, that should be concerning. So that's what I've got on the rental car fiasco, and some thoughts that I've had on what it says about Applewhite, or maybe more broadly what it says about what it means to believe in Heaven's Gate, whether in the past or in the present. I think it is a very important episode to pay attention to in their history, precisely because I think we still to this day, can probably easily observe similar kinds of attitudes and similar kinds of responses to, the idea of, the idea that the rules that apply to everyone else don't actually apply to them. So if you have any examples, or if you have any questions or comments you want to share, definitely do so below. And until next time, thanks.